I've been southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train. Going too fast now, think I'll slow down, standing in the pouring rain.
All right, what's going on, guys? Hey, Tony and Tristan back here at Zero Duck 30 podcast. So, you know, Tristan's been saying that if you're not smart, you must be dumb if you're not using Huntwise. All right, so we're going with that. And you'll hear me say it over and over. At least go download it for free. Guys, they're offering exclusive Zero Duck 30, 20% off elite version if you use code DUCK30. And then we're super excited to be drinking our coffee and also passing on a discount code from the Dirty Duck Coffee Company. Thank you, Jay and Levi and Buck. And we're going to do code DUCK15.
Zero Duck 15 on that one.
Zero Duck 15 on that code. So anyway, Tristan, why don't you take this thing off today?
Well, yeah, we're super excited today, guys. We got Sean Weaver on. You guys probably know him from the Duck Lore series from MeatEater. And Sean, man, thank you for your time and coming on the podcast, man. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about, you know, who you are and what you do? And I mean, I'm sure people know you from the MeatEater stuff, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, appreciate it. First off, thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it a lot. You know, as far as me, yeah, I'm a producer at MeatEater. I produced the Duck Lore series there, and before I worked there, I kind of worked in and out of the different parts of the waterfowl space, right? I was a TV producer for the Grind Waterfowl TV, which I did that for 4.5 years. Before that, I was a hunting guide. Did all kinds of photography work for a variety of clients in the space. And we can get into that more later because that's kind of a story that leads to how I got to MeatEater, really. Nice. So yeah, man, I started working in the waterfowl space years ago and luckily ended up sitting here at MeatEater doing duck stuff.
That's cool, man. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're from South Dakota originally?
So I grew up in Iowa, which, you know, God bless it. Great place to grow up, awful place to be a duck hunter. You know, that's a whole nother story to talk about what happened to Iowa and the conservation problems that led to Iowa being a bad place to be a duck hunter. But yeah, I grew up in Iowa and then got wise or a little bit more wise when I graduated high school and moved to South Dakota to chase ducks and go to college. But let's be honest, it was to chase ducks.
Yeah, that's a cool place to go to college, man. We definitely feel you on that because Georgia is not the most prime waterfowl state either.
Oh, come on.
But
well, you know, and what you guys have working against you is that you have even more duck hunters. And, you know, it's tough duck hunting, but you also are dealing with a ton of competition.
For sure. One thing that I just found out this last season, though, that's you probably know this, Sean, but I guess down there in Lake Seminole is one of the biggest the biggest canvasback migration in the United States, apparently, which is pretty interesting to hear, you know.
That's on my hit list. It's a place I got to go experience and go do.
Heck yeah.
You know, canvasbacks are an interesting one because we can look very granularly at canvasback populations and where they winter and see how a combination of food and hunting pressure influences where they spend their time. You know, the Chesapeake Bay is the best example of the loss of both their food source and being overhunted. And now, you know, they only winter maybe 10% of what they would have wintered 100 years ago.
Wow.
And, you know, there's a lot of places like that. Heron Lake, Minnesota, a couple places in Wisconsin and New York. These places are not, you know, I guess what you'd say classic canvasback habitat anymore.
Mm.
But they were at one point, and they just got pressured out of there, or they lost their food source. You know, there's a great book called Texas Market Hunting History by R.K. Sawyer. And in this book, he lays out that as the market hunting was so vicious up on Long Island and Chesapeake Bay for canvasbacks, that a ton of canvasbacks actually started going and wintering in Pamlico Sound, North Carolina, because they just weren't getting hunted as hard. And those canvasbacks were actually willing to do that, even though they had to eat fish instead of water celery. But they were willing to change their diet to get away from hunting pressure, which is super interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of a testament to, I mean, you know, ducks can be so smart and so dumb at the same time, you know, depending on what's going on. But that's a testament to, you know, their will to, you know, keep going, surviving.
Yeah, I mean, they're very good at self-preservation, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they know something's not good for their health, they're not going to do it.
Like, yeah, I've seen enough of my buddies get taken
I've
out.
seen that decoy spread before. I know it's not good for my health.
Unlike us duck hunters, you know, we do this totally for our health. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, you know what? I put it equivalent to what Navy SEALs go through. You know, we've all been there carrying the telephone pole on our back. You know, we've all been there together doing it, sloshing through the mud, drowning in water, fighting through the sand, the mud, you name it.
Maybe about a tenth of that.
No, but
Yeah, well,
it can feel like that sometimes, but it sure is fun.
For sure.
you know, for me, it's the gas station food and the Monster Energy drinks. It's like, I know they're not good for me, but how else am I going to go through my day?
Did you see the meme going around, Sean? That was like, I'm hunting this the most healthy game meat on earth, and then it said my diet, and it was like what you just said.
Oh, it's like your diet during hunting season.
Yes, yeah, and it said, you know,
That's funny.
out there trying to get this healthy meat while you're eating, like, you know, Little Debbie's and Monster Energy drinks.
Yeah, dude. Oh,
I wonder.
it's bad.
I wonder if
I've consumed way too many breakfast burritos from Hot Lamps.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I wonder, you know, now we're talking about this, not to go totally right field here, but, you know, I wonder how many gas stations, you know, like I'm talking about like well-ran organizations like Racetrack, Quick Trips, all this stuff. I wonder if they have us as a demographic. You know, they're
They
like,
got to.
during the months of November through February, our sales are going to increase by 38% because of duck hunters, you know, and deer hunters too.
Oh yeah.
All kinds of
Casey's breakfast pizza.
Oh, you know.
It's got
You
like
know.
40% of their annual sales are duck hunters.
Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up because we're originally from Illinois, and so, you know, Casey's obviously big Midwest, and man, we're always telling people about Casey's Pizza, and they're like, a gas station, really? We're like, yeah.
Yeah, really, dude. It's phenomenal. Like,
Okay, well, I got to ask now. On breakfast pizza, are you a bacon or sausage guy?
I could go both, but I guess sausage.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a sausage guy for sure.
Okay, interesting. Well, you guys balance me out because I just ravaged that bacon, man.
Hey, by the way, you're not allowed to cut out the clip where I just said I'm a sausage guy, all right?
Yeah, no kidding. Just put that on TikTok.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I talked about ravaging bacon, so I don't know if that's much better.
Yeah.
No, but we actually did a pizza review our first year of filming, you know, just tried to show the reality of, you know, the shenanigans that you're doing with your buddies. And, you know, they came up, the younger guys came up with this idea, bro, why don't we start doing pizza reviews in the different cities we go to, right?
It was kind of a joke off of Dave Portnoy with Barstool doing pizza reviews.
yeah. And
This is getting way into the weeds of my personal life, but when I can't sleep, I pull up some of Portnoy's pizza reviews.
They're awesome.
They're hilarious, they're fun, but I think more than anything, and this isn't a slight on Portnoy, but I think more than anything, they're just so mind-numbingly easy to watch
Mm-hmm.
that they just put me to sleep. it turns my brain off completely. All I'm doing is watching a guy from Boston eat pizza, and within 10 minutes I'm falling asleep.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, and we were just talking about that the other day. Like me and my dad he was saying that, I can't ever watch anything like action or suspense or anything like that when you're trying to fall asleep, because it'll just, your mind will go and then you'll be up till 2 a.m.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep.
But yeah, man. So getting back to the waterfowl stuff, you said that you used to be a guide and stuff, or I've seen that on maybe the intro to duck lore. And where did you guide? Was it South Dakota or?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. I was guiding in South Dakota, and then I was guiding spring snows, traveling, kind of following the snow migration. But as far as in the fall, it was in South Dakota. Yeah.
I gotcha. And man, was it South Dakota that not this season, but the season before was like super dry, or was it
last year and the year before? We were through a real rough 2-year drought there. And there's this guy that has this theory of the desertification of the United States follows, I can't remember what some kind of meridian that runs right through the center of the country. And he did a TED talk on it, and how everything east of this meridian is going to continue to get wetter. Everything west of it is going to continue to get drier and go through desertification. And it's funny because the line runs through Brookings, South Dakota. I mean, perfectly.
Wow.
Right where I live. And for the last 10 years, we've had these crazy cycles of flood, drought, flood, drought, flood, drought. I mean, ruthlessly flooding, then ruthlessly dry. And I got to think, the guy is pretty spot on, man, because we're like hugging that line. Jeez. And it can be great for duck populations when we get that flooding, but real rough on them when we get the drought the last 2 years.
Yeah. And I mean, because I think it was a year or two ago that also the prairies, pothole regions have been, dry for a good minute now, but that made the Dakotas like really bloom, or like North Dakota, wasn't there a big population boom there?
Yeah, that was 3-4 years ago, right? God, time flies. And this year we saw a return of water, at least this spring. We're getting back dry again, but we at least got enough moisture this spring to kind of give us some nesting habitat back. Nice. The ducks should have had a good hatch this spring compared to the last two anyway.
Good deal.
This just kind of came to mind. It's not really kind of on our outline, but Sean, we don't get an opportunity to talk to a lot of folks that are from the north, like you are. It's no joke. Everybody that I know, all the way up and down the middle and the Mississippi Flyway, the Central Flyway, everybody has saw a big boom in the pintails. What is it like from you guys' perspective? Because one thing that I've learned a couple of years ago that I found very unique about the breeding habits of pintails is that if they have a place that they go and they show up and the nesting habitat is not correct, they just won't breed. And I didn't know that. And I heard the scientists talk about that our biologists on Ducks Unlimited podcast. What do you see up your way as far as pintail numbers?
Pintails are really hard, man. Just because you can get so skewed on what you see in one hunt, right? Mm-hmm. You get one migration that hits. You get one cold front and perfect habitat conditions going into October. You can have an October where all you can do is whack pintails, and every hunt you're trying to not shoot pintails.
Right.
And then that's a true thing. Saskatchewan, North Dakota, South Dakota. In October, you might have if you hit it right, where that first flock of the day is pintails that do it so right, you shoot, you're already close enough to your limit after the one flock that you can't shoot the rest of the morning. It's a dark morning, and you end up not shooting flock after flock because you can't quite tell if there's a pintail mixed in or not. And so it's really hard to give a good, honest assessment of pintails from a hunter perspective. You know, I know that in the Pacific Flyway, they're seeing a drastic increase of the drake to hen ratio to where now there's like 8 drakes for every 1 hen.
Wow.
And it's a problem. It's like a huge problem. And, you know, they're trying to figure out exactly what that is and why. But one of the things they point to is nest predation. That hens are just getting whacked on her nest, which is part of a much larger discussion, right? That we just need better nesting habitat and more of it. And, you know, predator control. We need all 3, right?
Right.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, man. And I guess they're probably got to be discussing, you know, raising the limit at least on the drakes, huh? Or no? I mean, what's their kind of thought about that?
You know, really, it comes down to how can you keep hens from getting whacked, right? How can you keep hens stable? You know, a bunch of drakes isn't necessarily the problem as much as it's just a collapsing number of hens in comparison to drakes.
Gotcha.
And you know, I think I actually talked on the MeatEater podcast about this. Is I'm trying to remember. Oh, it's Rut the Dating App is the name of the podcast. But anyway, in that podcast, I lay out some of Delta Waterfowl's research on nest predation and go through some of the studies they've done. And, you know, frankly, man, up till the 1980s, everybody trapped. You know, trapping for fur was a big deal. And then kind of after the last trapping boom, people have quit trapping, and you've seen an explosion of mesopredators across the Midwest and the North, like raccoons and skunks. And raccoons are darn good at eating eggs, man.
Dang, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's shoot.
You know, the Delta actually brought this up, but in the 1950s was the first time they could find written recorded history of anyone even talking about raccoons being in North Dakota.
Really?
Yeah, man. I mean, like out on the prairie, right? They might have been in riparian areas like creek bottoms and river bottoms, but out on the prairie, they weren't there. And now if you think about it, you know, what used to all be grasslands is now cornfields and wheat fields. And we've all seen how much raccoons love eating corn.
Yeah.
And so they have this ever-present food source. And then so their populations blow up along the edge of cornfields and grasslands coinciding together. And then, you know, come springtime, of course, they're going to be opportunistic eaters of eggs.
Yeah. Shoot.
Wow.
So,
wow. Well, I didn't mean to take us on a left turn, but that's some super interesting stuff. I mean,
well, it's much more interesting than me being a waterfowl guide. So, that stuff.
No, but so you know, one of the big things, and one of the things we're super excited about, and I know you're super excited about, is, you know, what did you just recently release, Sean?
We just launched season 2 of Duck Lore. Not Duck Lord. I'm not an egoist like that. LORE.
Duck Lord.
A guy I know that actually thought for months that that's what I was saying, and he never once said anything to me that like I was being a cocky son of a gun. I was like, man, you kept your mouth shut this whole time thinking it was named Duck Lord. But
that's awesome.
Man, you showed up on somebody's post, you know, with the handle Duck Lord. Man, you want to talk about it, you'll get fired on by some Georgia boys, that's for sure. Like, who the hell you think you are, Duck Lord?
Yeah, no, I would be saying the same thing. But yeah, so we just launched the first episode of season 2, and The second season will be 6 episodes in addition to the other 6 episodes that already launched in February.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we go some awesome places, man. We go to start off in Salt Lake, then Wyoming, Missouri, New Mexico, Arkansas, and South Dakota. So quite the variety of places.
Wow.
That's exciting, man. I'm excited to see the stuff coming out. Being, with your writing and photography and that background and stuff, and being a producer, what would you suggest to this is just one of the questions I had for the guys that kind of like guys like us, really, that 3 years ago when me and my dad first started filming our own hunts, it was very GoPro, iPhone, as basic as you could be, and teaching yourself Adobe and stuff. What would you suggest for people that are trying to get into filming their hunts and that kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, a big thing, man, is just understanding the arc of storytelling, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you're just a parable out of the Bible, or an orator sitting around a fire, or cave paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that process of telling a story, and not just filming for the sake of filming necessarily, but figuring out how you can make this interesting and engaging to people.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's maybe more like the actual how to have successful content, but how to even get into content, for me was just, I went balls to the walls with it, man. I was living poor as pork can be. I had a camera, but I only had $27 to my name, tight, poor. Right. And just was willing to knock on doors, so to speak, of talking to anyone that would give me information. I give these guys a lot of credit because they kind of helped me take the leap. Mm-hmm. There's a company in Kansas called Rockhouse Motion, and anyone who isn't familiar with Rockhouse Motion should make themselves familiar, because they have some of the best video content in the hunting world ever. Beyond the Roar is a great film of theirs. They did a video with Sitka gear called Wings. That's just all waterfowl stuff. Mm-hmm. Anyway, those guys, I was some kind of goofy, silly, dumb 19-year-old kid. And they were willing to talk to me about production and about camera work and about photography. And they took time out of their busy days and busy schedules to just talk to, a nobody. And but first, before that, it took me reaching out to them and willing to talk to those guys. And, now they're way busier and got families and running big productions and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately it was, a combination of my willingness to go out and just to try to talk to people and learn from people. I wasn't trying to get anything out of them other than just wanting to learn from them. Mm-hmm. And we became friends through that. And that was how I really got my first step into understanding, the professional side of production, not just doing it as a hobby.
That's awesome.
And so yeah, I guess that's my advice, right? Is you got to be willing to learn from people and not think you can't think you're hot stuff right away if you aren't actually good at what you do yet. You just got to be willing to be humble and be able to learn. I had some guy trying to do work for me by spamming me in my Instagram comments, that I can hire him. I'm like, man, that is not gonna work. Yeah. You're trying to take the look at how good I am approach, whereas I want to see the humble approach. I want to see you want to learn and be better every day at it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's that's a good step in the right direction, because most guys just want to be friends with people and mentor people and talk about their knowledge, right? I love talking about my knowledge. I'd be a liar if I said I didn't.
Yeah. Yep. No, man, it's a good point that you brought up, that, you kind of reached out to those guys and, with Rock House, and they were so willing to help you out. And it seems like what I've noticed with the waterfowl community, sometimes the waterfowl community can be kind of, especially on public land, you know how that goes. But the people I've talked to, and luckily with us starting this podcast, talking to different people that have brands and stuff, people are really willing to give you advice. It seems like, because I ask people all the time, what kind of cameras you're running, what kind of mics, like, how you edit, and people, it just seems like, at least in that side of things, people are willing to help you out if you're just, if you just ask. So
it's a definitely, a community of selflessness when it comes to that. And yeah, you're right, Tristan. You hit it on the head. I never really thought about it from that angle. I just kind of embraced it as just nice people. But what a great point.
For sure.
Well, a high tide lifts all boats, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
If we can all be better waterfowlers, be better conservationists, be better storytellers, if we can all be better about how we portray our craft and our love for our craft, then ultimately it makes it a better place. Yeah. I've never understood this petty shit talking mentality in Instagram comments, YouTube comments, whatever. Are there guys out there that, even in the waterfowl space that I'm not big fans of and, don't think are like the shining standard of what I want waterfowlers to be? Absolutely. But do I need to go run my mouth about it? No, no, not at all. Just make myself be a better storyteller and a better guy every day. At least try to be.
Right.
As I, take a nice swig of beer and, try to make myself better every day and better storyteller every day. And I think that will, truth be told, there could be a guy that sees what we've done with duck lore and say, you know what, that's how we need to go about our show. Right. We need to do it how he's doing it. And to me, it'd be like, great. That means like another guy making a better version of a show.
Right.
Sure. I like that mentality more.
Yeah.
Better place to come at the world from.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head with that, and all of us have had a business life. Most of us outside of just the waterfowl space, and, I've been in business for several years, and there's no way possible I could had the success I've had in my career without people that I listened to that were, nice enough to pull me under their wing. And I, thank God I wasn't so stubborn that I didn't listen, I mean, there's a lot of times where you try to help somebody and they don't listen. I'm a big thing, Tristan knows that I almost keep a list of how many people I get into hunting, and I love it when I get somebody and see, what it does to them, whether it's deer hunting, duck hunting, whatever,
Yeah.
And, the ones that are going to put forth the effort, the ones that want to do it. And everybody goes at a different pace now, nobody has to be as psycho as we are, and some people like to go do it a couple times a year, and that is awesome. But, we talk a lot about being ambassadors of the sport, and from the top to the bottom, it's always best to just take, like you said, Sean, the humble approach. And, we all got something to learn.
Well, I thought, kind of off that, Tony, and what you said too, Sean, a great point you brought up was, the way we portray it, hunting's getting attacked more and more, as we go on. And the way things are portrayed in like a kind of I guess you could elegant, if you will, or just like a nice way that's portrayed. We're always big about like, when you take pictures with your animal, like with the deer, don't have the tongue hanging out, looking all goofy, like try to make the animal look as good.
We wipe the blood off the faces of the ducks. We close their bills.
Right. And, same thing
on most of it.
Yeah. And, same thing kind of with the videos, what you were saying, I think, Sean, with like the way we portray the sport, and make it where more people could get into it. And, I think that's important.
Yep. You're doing it for a bigger cause.
Yeah. And, frankly, it's like, that was kind of the methodology behind why I wanted to film and produce duck lore in the way we did is, if you just took a sample of traditional waterfowl TV over the last 20 years, with the exception of Duck Commander, because that stuff was great. The original DVDs, right?
Yeah.
That stuff is phenomenal. But you take them out of it and just do a sample of all the other waterfowl content and TV shows and whatnot over the last 20 years. Some of it was approachable, but the vast majority of it was really great to a waterfowler, to a guy that duck hunts. But to the person that doesn't duck hunt, all they saw was guys going with an outfitter and shooting a pile of birds. And, I think that, frankly, for me, what I wanted to do is show how the actual duck hunter, the everyday duck hunter, how he hunts, right? And he deals with crazy shit like ice and boats breaking down and, all this other stuff that kind of never really seemed to make it in the shows as much. And heck, missing, like all of it, right? Just the whole entirety of what we all love about it didn't always come through. And, I'm not going to sit here and say it always comes through with duck lore either, but I'm trying for it too.
Well, Sean, that's the very first thing that I noticed, and I wanted to talk about some stuff before we got on camera, and now I'm going to talk about it, and that is, first time I tune in, I watch it, and it was last year, and Drew is a big MeatEater guy, and I love it when the younger guys come to me and they're like, dude, you got to see this guy, you got blah 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 blah, and I'm like, all right, so I got to change my old ways and watch the newer things and do all this stuff. And then Drew says, dude, did you see this duck hunt? And I'm like, what? MeatEater? He's like, yes. You know what I did? Just like thousands and thousands of other people did. They said, right in. I turned on your show, Sean, and immediately the opening, you had me. You had me immediately at the opening, because every duck hunter can relate to your opening and what your story is all about. So will you please go into what motivated that and how you came up with the concept and what you're going to continue to do, and talk a little bit about that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's calling the kettle black in a way, right? Because I was a producer of waterfowl television for years, and was making good content, I guess you could say. Like, it was stuff that people like to watch, but I always felt like it just missed some of the real storytelling element. And part of that's always, you want to do your sponsors justice, right? You want to give, because ultimately we're a small enough market where this content gets paid for by companies selling product. It just does. And it's an unavoidable truth. And for years, I think that the waterfowl world kind of had almost an arms race to like trying to do its sponsors more and more justice. And they left storytelling behind in the name of that. And see, here was the problem I had with it. And here was really my take on that and opinion on that from the start was, okay, yeah, you make something kind of almost like an infomercial and you make it kill heavy and focused on showing how Star Spangled Awesome a product is. You might have 10,000 people that watch that, and let's say 1% of them convert, right? So you have 100 guys that buy stuff because of that. Well, let's say you go the other way with it and you take it to my end, right? Where it's storytelling based and you're not always just focused on doing the product justice. And you're just focused on telling an awesome story that people want to engage with and watch. Well, that might get 100,000 views. And yeah, okay, let's say your conversion to selling product goes down to 0.5%. Well, it doesn't matter. you still sold way more products
True.
anyway, because people can relate more and you're getting more eyeballs on it. Yeah, your conversion sucks, but ultimately you ended up with more eyeballs and more people watching it. That was kind of what was always like, to me, was the no-brainer. It's like, I don't understand why more people aren't thinking that way, thinking with that mentality of like, if we have more eyeballs on it overall, more people engaging with it and liking it and being interested in it, won't that offset maybe that we don't push products so hard? And that was my hope and what I wanted to do. And also, as a waterfowler, I wanted to see content that was how I grew up hunting, how I didn't grow up ever going to fancy outfitters. I grew up with a absolute trash longtail motor that had some crap key system that to hold the shaft in place, that the key would always fall out and we'd end up rowing that boat back to shore.
Wow.
And
Been there.
yeah, dude, I wanted that story out there, not like, not just another, and that's nothing against outfitters, right? I was an outfitter. I was a guide, but how many waterfowlers actually ever get to go hunt with a, high-end professional guide? Not that many. Not that many. And if they do, it's one time in their life, or, maybe even if they're lucky, once every 5 years or every year, maybe. But the vast majority of the days of their season are doing it out on public land or knocking on doors. And that's what I wanted to see. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And how did you get connected with MeatEater as far as the duck lore stuff?
Yeah, so I was actually doing all kinds of different photo shoots kind of around the country, because I had my own creative agency and was a for hire photographer and videographer, right? And actually one of the camera guys that works with us on MeatEater now also worked for me. And anyway, Cabela's kind of would send me all over to do all these cool things, and I ended up shooting photographing a wild food event out in Oregon with Steve.
Nice.
For Benchmade Knives, and Steve was there cooking up wild game as he does. And when we were all done with the meal and shooting photos and all that, I cracked a beer and sat down, put the camera down, and him and I started just talking duck hunting. And for a long time, we ended up sitting there just BSing like we'd known each other for a long time. And anyway, became friends from that. And then he said he wanted to come to South Dakota on a duck hunt. I had invited him on a South Dakota duck hunt, and he said he wanted to do that. And so he came, and that's when we filmed the Netflix episode. And then after that, he gave me an opportunity to kind of do MeatEater's waterfowl content.
That's cool, man.
So,
you bring up the Netflix episode. That's got to be pretty wild to be like, see where you came from, like you said, like the key falling out in your boat or whatever. Like, here I am hunting with Steve Ranella on Netflix.
For sure. Never would have expected that, man. When I started my photography business, I got 52 no's before anyone ever actually was willing to hire me for a photo gig.
Wow. And
so to go from that, right, of like everyone slamming the door in my face, metaphorically, to like Steve Ranella, this guy I'd looked up to, now becoming a friend of mine. When a guy that you look up to becomes your friend, your hero becomes your friend, so to speak, it's a pretty surreal moment.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, man, that's awesome stuff, Sean. And back to kind of the South Dakota stuff. You mentioned, a lot of guys asking for permission, and, the Dakotas are such a big ask for permission state, I feel like, at least from what I've heard.
Sure.
And, what would be your advice for people that are going out to South Dakota or North Dakota? I know South Dakota, I think, is a draw state. But what would be your advice for like the right way to go about asking for permission and scouting and all that stuff out there?
That's a fantastic question, and I appreciate that question.
Thank you.
Because, you know, every year less and less landowners say yes to hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And people think it's because these guys are anti-hunting, and some are. But what it way more is a lack of willingness to build a relationship. Everyone wants it to be so transactional, right? They show up, knock on the door. Can I hunt your field? The guy says yes. Then you go out there and rut the hell out of it and mess it all up for everybody else after you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the way to handle it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Common sense goes a long way as far as, you know, not driving your pickup through their electric fence and snapping a wire, or not spooking their cows to where they got to go, you know, spend an hour of their morning wrangling calves down every county road.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those things really help bring, you know, and then go the other way with it, right? Willingness to, you go knock on that door and say, hey, you know, we'll take tomorrow afternoon to help you with chores if we can hunt tomorrow. Or, you know, hey, we'll stop by and drop off a case of beer and, you know, if we can hunt tomorrow. Or, hey, would you like any duck? We pluck all our ducks, and, you know, if that's something you're interested in, we'll drop one off tomorrow afternoon. Things like that are, they go a long way. It's just, you know, if you were trying to sell them insurance,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you wouldn't just knock on their door and say, hey, buy my insurance.
Right.
Right? You build a relationship with them. And ultimately, you're asking them to do you a favor by allowing you to trespass on their land.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so really, it's such a cliche to say, leave it how you left it, treat it like it's your own. But I mean, that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
If someone came knocking on your suburbia house and asked if they could play wiffle ball in your backyard, you know, would you say yes if just some random guy asked, or would you like expect a little bit of courting first?
Right.
Yeah, no, but you know, it is an important point that you bring up about that, because it's been a little bit of a lost art, like a lot of things. And, you know, I even had, you know, I live on a lake, you know, out back, just real quick. And the other day, you know, I fish out there all the time and stuff. And I see some young boys that were, you know, walking around, and some of my neighbors have signs that say private property, all this crap. Right. But they came onto my property, and I saw them down there fishing, and I come walking down, and I saw one look at the other one, like, tell him something like, oh shit, here he comes, you know? And I just walked to him. I go, you guys catch anything? And they're like, well, we caught this 5-pounder. I go, really? And he's like, yeah, you want to see a picture of it? You know, and they were showing me a picture of it and stuff. And I said, hey guys, I said, I'm not going to be one of those, you know, Karens. I go ahead, do whatever you want. I said, but just put them back, you know? And he's like, I go, and they're like, oh yeah, yes sir, thank you sir, you know, stuff. But that's on a very small, minimal level. But it was nice to see some young kids doing it right. You know what I mean? So, but continue, please.
No, you know, you're good. I just think, yeah, as long as people understand to respect the resource, we'd all have a lot more hunting ground, frankly. A lot more people that would say yes and give us permission and go ahead, you know, if you just can give a little bit of love in return. A little bit of respect goes a long, long, long way. And, you know, it's hard. I get it. It's hard for people. It's kind of like when kids go to college. They like show up in a college town and act like crazy people and hooligans because it's not their town.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go home on the weekend and, you know, mind their sirs and ma'ams and go to church on Sunday morning.
Yep.
And it's like, well, you know, treat that town like it's your own. You know, treat those fields in North Dakota like it's your own. Treat those winter wheat fields in Kansas like they're your own. You know, and don't go rutting it all to holy hell and turn a farmer that said yes for 20 years into a guy that says no.
Yep.
That's great advice, Sean.
Yep.
With South Dakota, and it's being a draw state, you know, I think the Dakotas are such like a dream hunt for a lot of people, including us eventually one day. How does the South Dakota draw process work? I just knew it was a draw state, and I've never really looked into it much further than that.
Yeah, no, it's pretty easy, man. It's pretty straightforward. You apply in June
Mm-hmm.
and early June, late May, I think it is. I can't even remember. Early June, and you go on there and you pretty much pick what license you want to apply for.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, like we have some zones that are 3-day licenses, and then we have a statewide 10-day license. And you just get to decide whether or not which one you want to apply for. And you can buy a preference point, so you get to draw twice, meaning like you can apply for the statewide, and then if you don't get it, you pay $10 for a preference point that kicks you into a drawing for a 3-day.
Mm-hmm.
Before COVID, you had like 100% chance of getting drawn, and then Canada closed, and everyone started applying for South Dakota again. So now it's like 50% chance of getting drawn last year, but that draw is really special. I'm so biased here. But South Dakota doesn't have a statewide full of habitat like North Dakota is, right? From Fargo all the way to Williston, you have duck habitat in North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
South Dakota is not that way. You pretty much have, a little chunk of. You pretty much have a third of the state, right? Is like duck habitat in South Dakota, and then the other 2/3 is way more pheasant and grassland and cattle ground. And so, that draw just keeps that stuff from getting too overran. Mm-hmm. And I think it really helps. Control pressure and make it great hunting. No, you don't get to go there every year. And I get it that's a bummer, but it means that when you do go, the quality of your hunting is going to be better.
Yeah.
And, in every other kind of hunting, we have trophy units and we have general access units, right? Like, let's say elk. Mm-hmm. You've got trophy units in Montana, and you've got just general hunting units. And, you might not get to go hunt the trophy unit every year, but it's worth it when you finally do draw it. And I don't think it's out of line for us to have the same thing with waterfowling.
Yeah, I actually, it's interesting that we, get on this topic. We always talk about like with Florida, where we do a lot of duck hunting. When we started Zero Duck 30, we lived in Jacksonville, Florida, and still duck hunt in Florida a good bit. It's a completely different experience than a lot of different places. But I mean, that hunting in so many different areas, everywhere is different. But one thing they do, they have some really, really good, quota hunts that, the state, checks in your birds at the end, and you see how many birds are killed, which species. And, some of them, if you get pulled for it, the average is like 4 or 5 birds a hunter, which, I mean, if you could go somewhere, even if it's just once a year, and have a hunt like that, where you're almost guaranteed if you're a good shot, I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? And I just, I'm not saying that a state like Arkansas or some of these other states should just make it 100% that way, but, why not specifically target, I do know they have some quota draws and stuff, but as far as like the out-of-state stuff with South Dakota, I wonder if there's just something that could be done to kind of create some more of those type environments, in other states.
Yeah, and I think it'd be hard to ever go do something like that in a state like Arkansas that's got such an industry built up. You would ruin a lot of people's pocketbooks. You would hurt a lot of people's investments, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't ever agree with doing something like that.
Yeah, sure.
But
good point.
South Dakota, you don't have that, and I think even like just having some drawing abilities on public areas like that are maybe managed for waterfowl, like what Missouri has done with a lot of their what people call duck parks. That no, you don't get to go hunt out in, let's say, Otter Slough every day, or you don't get to go hunt out in Four Rivers every day. But when you do, it's going to be a good hunt. Mm-hmm. And I do like states doing that. I think that's good. I think where I start kind of disagreeing with it is if you start really telling people what they can do with land they've purchased and okay, yeah, you bought land here, but now just because you're from out of state, you don't get to actually hunt your own land. Like,
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that brings up a great point. And we got a good friend of ours that bought property in Iowa. Everybody knows how well managed the whitetail population is in Iowa. I mean, I've watched it change over my life. Illinois, there was a 3-county area called the Golden Triangle, and all of a sudden the internet came and that got lost. And even though that's where most record books have been taken in the Pope and Young, Iowa has turned into the super state, and they do such, it seems like very similar to what South Dakota's doing with the waterfowl draw. Same thing in Iowa. You don't get it every time, but if you do, you got a good chance at a good quality hunt on public land or any land.
Yep. And it's like, if you want to just be able to, if you just want to be able to hunt every year, then like that's why you would maybe go to Texas or Kansas or Canada. But if you want that experience of a South Dakota cornfield mallard hunt late in the season, no, you might not get to experience it every year, but because there's a limited number of people coming, it's going to be a unique experience if you get it right.
Yeah, that's cool.
And one thing too that I think, just to kind of close up the whole Arkansas thing, so people don't think I'm like not telling the whole story, but one thing I do like that Arkansas does too is, and we actually pulled one of them last year, is they run a co-op with farmers, and I think they pay farmers, they work something out with the farmers, but then if you pull that in state or out of state, you can hunt that field for the weekend, which I think is a pretty unique opportunity out there too.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
But yeah, man. One thing I wanted to ask you too is kind of switch gears here is the avian bird flu stuff. It's something that we've kind of wanted to talk on a podcast about and maybe to do a whole podcast on it, but it was just kind of a unique thing to kind of bring up because I know you've talked about it and know some good stuff on it, and I just wanted to kind of see what you've heard about it and your kind of take on that.
Yeah, the avian influenza is it's spooky stuff, just not necessarily because of bird kill-offs, but just because we don't know where it goes from here, right? What we've seen with the avian influenza is that a disease that historically was only highly pathogenic. And so some backstory. What happens with avian influenza is ducks and wildlife are always flying around with some kind of bird flu present in the population, but it's always been low pathogenic, not super deadly to wild birds at all. Actually, not deadly to wild birds. Okay.
Wow.
And then what happened historically is that would transfer over, that low pathogenic avian influenza would transfer over into domestic populations. And then there it would become highly pathogenic in domestic populations and be very deadly to domestic populations. Now, until now, it's almost never reversed course and gone highly pathogenic in domestic back into wild populations. The highly pathogenic, with the exception of like a few cases, had never gone back into wild populations until 2021 and last winter. And now we see this highly pathogenic strain not just go back into wild populations, but run rampant through them. And I know that there's still cases popping up in California and Alaska right now. And it started all the way down in your guys' neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And it came over from Europe. So it's really interesting to see how this one is different than all, what highly pathogenic avian influenza has been before.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because it's killing wild birds. We don't really know what the population impacts are. They're probably not like population level impacts. But what becomes a concern is, where do we see it go from here?
Mhm.
Does this become a reoccurring theme of every year having highly pathogenic avian influenza that ends up killing a bunch of wild birds?
Right.
And hopefully that's not the case, which comes back to guys just should be trying to, in every way, shape, and form, manage their carcasses and manage their birds wisely. I could even see us ending up with some, long term, if it becomes a real problem years over years. You could almost see CWD type regulations, right?
Yeah.
Of trying to not have waterfowl congregate in an area, trying to not congregate them on flooded corn or things of that nature. But birds are tough. They're a lot more gregarious and you can always hang out together anyway. So
For sure. And I mean, with the CWD stuff, I mean, you've seen it in, for example, like when we lived in Florida, we'd go up and hunt in Georgia for deer. And if we shot one, we would have to, and we'd just be on the weekend. So let's say Sunday morning, somebody shoots a deer. Before you could come home Sunday night, you got to get all that meat off the bone. And you can't bring any of the bone back into the state. So that's, I mean, I'm glad they're doing something about it, but it is interesting kind of the challenges it brings up.
Yep.
yeah.
So. Sean, on that topic, and if you're not, if I'm asking an out of line question, just tell me, and we'll save it. But, what would you say to the duck hunter that obviously it's present? Number one, is there anything they should look for in behavior of waterfowl or the presentation of the meat, the feathers? Anything like that they should look for? And then on the flip side of it, from a health concern, is it okay to eat them?
Yeah. So, from my understanding, there's no concerns with eating them. The actual way you would contract it yourself is from heavy exposure to the virus itself, which would actually come in the form of either you breathing in the particles, or you kind of putting them on your face through, like, for example, let's say you touch the duck's mouth or the duck's feet or something like that, then you go eat a Dorito, right?
Yep.
Like mass, purposeful, intentional exposure like that, where it's like very obvious how you get exposed, is something that the CDC said they'd be concerned with. So they want people to be bagging carcasses. They want people wearing a mask and gloves when they clean birds. Even just like taking a very basic thing of like, hey, when we clean birds, let's clean them outside, not in a, out in a ventilated area, right?
Yeah.
Rather than like somewhere with no ventilation where you're pushing on a bird's chest and making it, in essence, breathe. But truthfully, like, the only way that highly pathogenic avian influenza has gotten into people before has been in domestic. No one's ever got it no person has ever gotten bird flu from wild birds, not in America. It's always been from domestic populations where someone works in a turkey barn or works in a chicken barn, and they're exposed to massive amounts of the virus every day. So, if you're worried about it, right, take precaution, wear gloves, wear a mask. For sure, just wear gloves anyway. Birds are gross. Like, I mean, if you're worried about it, right? Like, right. I personally don't worry about it a lot, but if it's something you're concerned about, definitely that's the first easy step. And then as far as watching the birds and seeing behavior in the birds, the behavior I was seeing a lot of with birds was like inability to kind of get up and fly, right? They just kind of like flop, and they kind of would do this head bobbing thing, almost like someone falling asleep driving home from a duck hunt on a sunny day.
Oh,
they they kind of had just like the bobbing up and down head, and they would kind of lift their wing real slow and then bob it back down, and almost like you're stretching your shoulders out in the morning.
Yeah.
It was kind of the behavior I saw a lot of this spring, and the snow geese that had it.
Man, that's really interesting, huh?
That makes me wonder now. You remember, this is just coming up because you're describing this behavior. You remember last year that I was out there on my little bass boat out back, and I saw that duck that I filmed and sent you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what is going on with this duck?
Mm-hmm.
Remember where it skimmed the surface of the water, wouldn't fly,
Yeah.
but it was almost using its wings like arms to swim. And it would go, and it went to the bank, and all was sticking up was, it was super skinny, and his bill was, it almost looked like a spoonie because it was so skinny. And remember, it had its head sticking above the water. It was real weird like that. And I'm like, what in the heck kind of duck is that? And it was just very strange behavior. I wonder if that was the same thing. It was a mallard hen, but I don't know.
It's kind of interesting. I just did a duck report on the MeatEater podcast that'll come out in a few days here. When this podcast comes out, it'll be out.
Nice.
That we talked about lead poisoning and what led to the lead shot ban and the research that went into why we banned lead shot. And, the whole time I was doing this research, I was thinking, lead poisoning and avian influenza have a lot of the same symptoms. It's interesting. It sounds like what you're describing definitely sounds a lot like what I saw in avian influenza, but then it also now makes me think like, oh, maybe it found some old lead shot somewhere.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of, runoff that go into these lakes from people's, they don't let you treat chemicals within 20 feet of the bank. But I know people that do it. I see them doing it. Yeah. And it all runs downhill, man. It's going into the water. And years ago, I used to be a farm pond fisherman. I ate them, boy, we got bass, catfish, whatever. You're eating it, whatever you caught. And one day my dad showed up at my uncle's pond, and we were sitting there fishing, and he said, you guys going to let them go? And I said, hell no, we ain't going to let them go. We're going to fry them up as soon as we get done. He goes, you ever thought about the amount of chemicals that Uncle Frank puts in these fields? And I went, yeah. So
and you're all of a sudden like, that's why I've been acting.
Ever since, like, people talk about the urban mallard, the urban geese, right? And it is a real thing that's going on. DU did a great podcast about it. It freaks me out if somebody like called me up and is like, hey, bro, we're going to be 20 miles outside of Atlanta, and we're going on a big Canadian goose feed for early geese. I'd be like, have fun with that. Because, I'm not going to be getting Alzheimer's from this goose that eats the grass that's treated in everybody's yard in Atlanta. I'm just not doing it. So anyway, but sorry to get off topic.
as we drink a Corona and Monster Energy drinks. Casey's breakfast pizza, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Well, heck yeah, man. Well,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to kind of dive into, and I don't know, honestly, I don't have my glasses on, so it's a little bit blurry on the outline. So if you don't mind, Sean, I mean, we try to keep things to an hour, but at the same time, I'm going to ask you questions as they come up.
Yeah, it's fine.
But, man, I've watched all you guys' videos. And the latest one, you guys are in Salt Lake. And, man, what was it like going through that experience? It was such a real hunting experience. And quite honestly, I'd never heard about the eggs.
The brine shrimp eggs.
Yeah, brine shrimp eggs. Man, talk about that episode and what it was like making it, and what people some of the highlights of what they'll be able to see when they watch that show.
Yeah, it was. Anytime you go out on, I've been out on the Salt Lake a few times now, and it's like being on the moon. I don't know how else to describe it. It's such a foreign place. The mud is downright insane. It's biblical. It's, just such a vast expanse of empty space that depth perception out there is incredibly hard. In that hunt, we kind of had the benefit actually of like ice and some sandbars, but on a typical year when you don't have all that ice like we did, it's just flat water.
Mm-hmm.
And you look like you're in that, whatever movie that was, Interstellar or whatever. No, that's not the one. But, one of those darn Martian-looking movies. And you just are like, wow, what a place. As far as the hunting goes, it's all about just like getting on the right spot where you aren't dealing with the mud, the water shallow enough to hunt. You're close enough to the birds, but not too far away. It's an interesting dynamic hunting out there. Once you're in the right spot, the decoying is easy. There's no real calling needed or, special decoy setups or nothing like that. No special hiding. That's all the easy part. The hard part's just getting at the birds out there. And cold and ice makes it a lot harder because you're already dealing with salt, right? You're already dealing with cameras and shotguns in freaking salt water, which is less than ideal.
And you guys couldn't even got out there had he not had this airboat, right? Has this airboat, and you guys were able to get out there. And one thing that I thought was kind of crazy and a little bit spooky there for a minute is that ice rush that came. You guys are out there. It was like, oh, hell no. It's time to go. And you want to talk about reality hunting.
Oh, dude. I really wish we could have shown that for what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wish we could have really, left the cameras rolling and shown how crazy that got, because the water and the ice came down that creek so fast that we went from, if you look at the start of that episode, we're on pretty much dry ground.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time Glade sprints back to the boat, which is like a half mile, God bless it that he does MMA and is like actually super fit, because we would have never left that lake. I would have died of a heart attack long before I ever got back with the boat. And, but Glade hoofed it back for the boat. And by the time he comes back, we have all the cameras and hunting gear shoved in our coffin blinds. And I'm standing in, knee to thigh deep water on what was dry ground 10 minutes before.
Holy cow.
And I'm just getting slammed with chunks of ice that are, 100 pounds. And we actually, we lost some decoys. That very last duck that he shot, we went searching for and never did find. We found a bunch of killed off birds that had died from the cold that night. But like the ice had buried that bird.
Wow.
It got insane there at the end to where it was like, we're trying to find our decoys. We're trying to keep people from getting swept away like camera guys. It was a mess. And I've dealt with ice flows, but not one like that where you're kind of, there's no dry ground nearsby.
Right.
Man, it sounds
that
almost
was the difference for me.
It almost sounds like hunting like an intercoastal, like kind of marshy type situation, but even like quicker, where because we hunt a lot of those areas, and it's kind of, you got to be like, all right, well, this WMA you can hunt out till 12, but we better be out of here by 10 or we're not getting the boat out.
And we've all stuck them.
Yeah,
we've all stuck them because we're going to push the limits.
Yeah, but thankfully in the marsh down there, it's not so much, freezing to death and
right.
All that stuff.
Yeah, it was cold that morning. It was, it was 12 degrees out. And then I think what happened that caused that ice flow, because when we got back to the truck, it wasn't even above freezing, which made me wonder. But I think what it was we had the sun poke out for a little bit. And I think the sun heated up that ice enough, even though it wasn't above freezing outside. Yeah. I think the sun was enough to, whatever it was, melt a little ice, melt a little snow. It did something goofy.
Well, heck yeah, man. Well, being that we're, not mostly, but, spend a lot of time in Florida duck hunting, we always talk to Mississippi Flyway guys, and they're like, man, you're out there duck hunting with gators? And I'm like, yeah, I actually had a teal eaten by a gator like last weekend. And have you ever hunted in like an environment like that, or is that something you're trying to do? Or
yeah, Texas last year in September.
Oh yeah, the teal.
We did coastal Texas, and there's gators around. We never had to deal with them directly like you guys do. Florida, I think, deals with that more than anywhere, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It's the first time ever that
especially on some of your like water management areas.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That sounds like crazy stuff. I do want to do that. Man, that's a hunt that I really want to do with that guy, Deer Meat for Dinner on YouTube. I'm just trying.
I don't know. I think I know that guy.
I'm trying to just get a hold of him, but I want to go do a black-bellied whistling duck hunt with him.
Yeah.
Simply because I think there's a great conservation story around them. They're supposedly phenomenal eating. Yes. I've never gotten.
They definitely are.
And so it's like, man, they are the epicenter. They are the exact description of what kind of story we love, with meat eater stuff.
That would be.
And so I definitely want to go do a black bellied episode, but I just, trying to even figure out trying to navigate, where to hunt, how to hunt them, who to hunt them with, all that stuff. So
yeah.
Well, you got a backup plan right here with us guys. So just keep that in your back pocket, man. If Plan A falls through, you just call Plan B. We'll make it happen.
Okay, all right.
We got some good connections down there, and I'll tell you, we say this all the time. One of the best things about hunting Florida is, man, where else can you go and go out and go on a deep sea fish at the same time, the same weekend? It's a great experience. You go hunt in the morning, or you go hunt your redheads in the evening, or whatever you do down in Florida, and then go out and catch some fish.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Florida gets, in the rest of the country, like Texas and Florida don't always get enough credit for how much of an absolute meat run you can go on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sure. It's like Alaska but warmer.
Yeah. No. Well, if you consider the wild pigs and gators and you can, no kidding, you can really, if you'd plan it out right, you could be set for a while going to Florida.
Well, as soon as you said that about Texas, I was just like, deer, pig, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, there's a million things you can hunt on any given day there.
For sure.
And if you're not hunting, you're fishing.
Yeah, for sure.
That's right. Well, heck yeah, Sean. Thank you so much, man, for taking the time out to be on the podcast. And obviously duck lore, people can just Google, YouTube, whatever, duck lore. But, outside of YouTube and stuff, are you guys on social media, or is it just they've followed you? Or
for sure, something I'm actually trying to hopefully get people to go look at and pay a little more attention to is on the MeatEater.com. We've got a waterfowl category on there that has so much stuff that every waterfowler should love. We've got breakdowns of the new First Light waterfowl camo and gear and all their new stuff. We've got podcast episodes about duck hunting. We've got how-to videos, articles about historical duck hunting stuff, biology-based stuff, recipes, duck lore episodes, you name it. So would love to. And, if people want to follow me on Instagram, that's cool too. Sean Weaver, you see. But I would encourage people. We just kind of built out a whole new waterfowl category page on the MeatEater website. And It's very extensive. There's all kinds of content there. So that's the MeatEater.com/hunt/waterfowl or something like that. So
that's awesome, man. And real quick, I wanted to ask you about this earlier. The new First Light waterfowl camo. Can you just talk about that a little bit? Like what you think about that, and just kind of, because I honestly I don't know anything about it. I just saw that it came out like yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, it just came out. Yep. So, man, First Light is historically they're from Idaho, right? Mm-hmm. They're a big game centric company before, but their big thing, their big claim to fame at First Light has always been merino wool base layers, mm-hmm. and which it's a warm when wet story. Ultimately, like mm-hmm. you stay warm even if you're sweaty, even if you're wet with merino, which makes it great for waterfowl hunting. And so they just wanted to build on that and actually make, show waterfowlers all their existing stuff that's good for waterfowling mm-hmm. by putting it in a waterfowl camo. But then on top of that, they built out a bunch of new waterfowl stuff that's honestly, I'm so biased here. It's not even fun. I can't say this objectively without people throwing up the red flag, but it's legitimately good shit, man. It just is. I wore it all season. I put stuff through the ringer. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't tell people to buy stuff that I don't like. And, I genuinely do like the stuff. It's really good stuff. Specifically, if guys are just going to buy anything at all, start off with some First Light base layers mm-hmm. in the merino wool, and you'll become a believer real quick, because then you'll be like, oh no, you can wear this stuff from September to January. So
that's cool, man. Well,
very cool.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you again for taking the time to come on the podcast, Sean. And we're looking forward to, as everyone is looking forward to the upcoming episodes coming out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You're such a humble man, and we appreciate what you're doing for our sport, and keep doing what you're doing, man. We're big fans, and we look forward to hopefully having you on again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks,
Sean. Take care.
Southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train. Going too fast now, think I'll slow down, standing in the pouring rain.